Hello everyone and welcome back to Shrine of Creeps. I know many of you come here to unwind with these chilling tales as you drift off to sleep. So before you settle in for the night, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if these dark stories are helping you find your way to peaceful slumber. Dark Rain. True crime sleep stories. A collection of chilling cases for restless nights. Case File 004, Pinewood Valley, March 2020. Episode 1. The Music Box. Pinewood Valley slept beneath a blanket of mist. The kind of town that barely made it onto state maps, not because it was hidden, but because no one really noticed it. Tucked between dying pine trees and the skeletal remains of old mining trails, it was the sort of place where secrets didn't stay buried. They just got passed down, house to house, like heirlooms. At the end of Main Street stood an antique shop, faded blue paint, an iron bell that groaned instead of rang, and a flickering "open" sign that buzzed like a trapped fly. It looked harmless enough, quaint even. A place for dusty vinyl, forgotten porcelain, and clocks that hadn't ticked in years. But the people of Pinewood Valley had started to whisper, because Blackwood's Antiques wasn't just a shop, it was a threshold. Susan Martinez didn't believe in ghosts, curses, or any of that nonsense. She believed in practical things: meal plans, homework calendars, and buying secondhand birthday presents during lean months. When she found the vintage jewelry box tucked into a velvet-lined shelf near the back of Blackwood's store, it felt like fate. Delicate cherrywood finish, a tiny ballerina with cracked pink paint, and a melody that made her throat tighten with nostalgia. It was perfect for Emily. Quiet, thoughtful Emily, who barely spoke in class and never raised her hand, even when she knew the answer. Emily, who once told her mother she wanted to be a dancer, but was too afraid of the stage. Susan took the box home. She didn't think about the price, far cheaper than it should have been, or the way Mr. Blackwood's smile lingered too long when she paid. She gave it to Emily on her 12th birthday. 3 nights later, the music began. Detective Robert Kane arrived at the Martinez residence just after 7 a.m. He'd only had 1 cup of coffee, and the cold fog still clung to his shoulders as he stepped onto the porch. He wasn't new to strange calls. Pinewood Valley was full of odd stories, most of them born from isolation and old trauma. But what struck him first wasn't what Susan said, but how she looked when she opened the door. Eyes sunken, skin pallid, a slight tremor in her hand. Inside, the house was dim, blankets taped to the windows. Every light turned on. The kind of defensive living that screamed, "We're afraid, but we don't know what of." The music box sat on the kitchen table, closed, silent. "She says it plays at 3:17, Susan whispered. "Every night. Same melody, over and over again. We can't sleep. And Emily..."
When Emily, she gets up and stares at it, just stands there watching it play.
Kane leaned down. He wasn't a superstitious man, but something about the box made the hairs on his neck rise. He flipped the lid. No sound, but there, engraved inside, was a message. Tiny script, almost too fine to read without a magnifier. For Emily Martinez, who always wanted to dance but never had the courage. He looked up. "Who wrote this?" Susan blinked. "I thought it was already there. Blackwood said it was a 1940s piece, but how would he know her name?" Kane gently closed the lid. He wouldn't. The next day, Kane paid a visit to Blackwood's Antiques. Theodore Blackwood was polite, older than he looked, voice smooth and dry like pages in an old book. He offered Kane tea from a chipped porcelain cup. The shop smelled of cedar, mothballs, and something sweeter. a strange, almost intoxicating perfume of decay and lavender. "The music box?" Blackwood asked, raising a thin brow. "Ah, yes, lovely piece. Sold it recently, didn't I?" "Where do you get your inventory?" Kane asked. Blackwood smiled, but his eyes didn't. "I have suppliers." "Names?" "Oh no, detective. We don't do things so formally in this line of work. Things find their way here. Always have." Kane frowned. "You sold a box engraved with a child's full name. A child you've never met." "Perhaps it's a coincidence," Blackwood said softly. "Or perhaps the universe knows more than we do." Kane left without his tea. He didn't like the way Blackwood had stared at him, like he already knew why the detective had come, like he'd been expecting him. Back at the station, Kane pulled the shop's transaction records. Sparse, incomplete, but something stood out immediately. Dates. Each item sold was logged before the date of arrival. Items sold to people before the customers ever entered the store. In one case, the transaction was recorded 6 days before the customer even moved to Pinewood Valley. Some entries went back decades. The strangest part? Those early buyers, many were now dead. Tragic deaths, fires, drownings, unexplained disappearances, and each one had bought a similarly personalized item. A mirror for a woman struggling with body dysmorphia. A locket containing a photo of a husband who died in Afghanistan, despite the buyer never having submitted a photo. A clock that counted down to the minute a man had a heart attack on the street outside Blackwood's store. The objects weren't just haunted, they were preparing people. Kane returned to the Martinez home one more time. He found Emily sitting cross-legged on the floor of her bedroom, pale, still, watching the music box.
"It's teaching me," she said without looking up.
"Teaching you what?" Kane asked gently.
"To be ready,"
she replied. "For what?" She looked up at him, and for a moment, her eyes didn't look like a 12-year-old's. They looked ancient. "For the collector. He's almost here." Kane felt his chest tighten. "What do you mean?" he asked. Emily didn't answer. The music box started playing, slowly, softly. And outside, the rain began to fall. To be continued in episode 2, The Mirror in the Attic.